In this video, I'm going to take a look at the maps of Battlefield 5 and rank them from best to worst. I've also got a selection of votes from the community that I'm going to include, so it's not just my opinion, it's what you guys think as well. Now, ranking on the basis of conquest is what I've done in the past. I did it with Battlefield 1, and I think it's the best thing to do with this game as well, although I will take into account the other modes when necessary. I know a lot of people don't play conquest anymore and prefer operations or grand operations as it is in BF5. I will for the most part stick with conquest though, because that is the staple game mode of the franchise. Before I start the video off, if you agree or disagree with me, make sure you leave a comment down below. You could also list the maps from best to worst in a comment. There are only 9 of them, so it won't take you a second to do. If I've said something in this video that you really don't agree with as well, maybe there's a map that I dislike that you think is an absolute Battlefield classic, do let me know in the comments and I'll have a look at it. Starting out with my least favourite map on the game, we have Hamada. Hamada is incredibly annoying from both an attacker's and a defender's point of view when playing Conquest, and although I did say I'm going to be focusing on Conquest, Hamada is actually locked into Conquest Assault, a game mode that I don't think works on any Battlefield map that it's been applied to in recent history. Battlefield 1 tried it out with some maps. I don't think really any of them worked that well, or they definitely didn't work better than Conquest, and then you also had Oman back in Battlefield 4 that again, it was imbalanced and it didn't really work. With Hamada, you have a map locked to Conquest Assault as opposed to the normal Conquest, and as I said, it does give it an unfair advantage against the other maps, but in all fairness, I just don't like it anyway. It's far too open. Some of the flags are pretty fun, but for the most part, you just have people lying down, fairly invisible due to the lack of visibility in the game, and you also have a lot of camping vehicles. Bombers from the beginning of the game can be a real pain. Even since the patch, you have planes bombing infantry with no cover. And then, of course, you have that Conquest Assault mode, which just makes it really difficult for the attackers to get out. Often they are camped into their base, and although you can take transport vehicles, maybe jump out of a plane, flank round, it's just an unnecessary frustration in my opinion. Next up, we have NARVIK. Now, some people do really like NARVIK, but for me, it's a map that I've never really enjoyed. I played it a lot in the testing stages of the game and never really enjoyed it then, and I've played it a lot since. I feel as if parts of the map just allow for camping snipers and tanks to shoot you in the open, whilst the visibility is atrocious all round. Despite the changes DICE made to try and address those issues, the map has never really grown on me, and while there are a couple of flags that can be quite fun, and it is pretty decent in some aspects of grand operations, I think for the most part it's a map that I could do without and needs a lot of work before it will be one I consider a classic. AERODROME is a map that I thought would be awesome. When I heard it announced from DICE, I thought this is a map that might be really good. You'll have this central flag that could be great for infantry engagements, and then you might have some larger tank battles around the old airfields and hangars. Although it is kinda like that, it's not what I expected, and the map is a little bit too open in my opinion. You get lots of campers shooting into the centre of the map where infantry are fighting for cover more than anything on Charlie flag. In places, as I mentioned, it is just far too open, and the tank versus infantry combat sucks. Essentially what I mean by this is you'll have tanks camping on hills, shooting infantry over a long distance. One, because you're completely able to do it because the visibility is quite decent, there's nothing blocking your line of sight, and infantry have just nowhere to go. And at the same time, you also have tanks which are incredibly easy to kill if they get close into the combat on these small flags. Charlie, for example, is a death trap for a tank, same with Delta and Bravo. Some of the other flags can be capped because you have an elevated position onto infantry pushing you, but as a tanker you want to be as far away from that as possible, and that leads to some pretty poor gameplay. Twisted Steel. Now this is a map that I'm completely divided on. Part of it is awesome and part of it sucks. I think that the bridge section on Twisted Steel is a really epic addition to the Battlefield franchise, and it reminds me of some of the big structures we've seen in the past, such as Charlie flag on Siege of Shanghai, that massive tower, and then in BF1 maybe the crashed airship on Giant Shadow, or the ballroom on Ballroom Blitz. Just some of these big structures that can lead to some pretty awesome gameplay. The issue is with Twisted Steel though, is that the bridge, although it allows for some really epic battles, it gives players a platform to stand, camp and snipe people out in the open. And although there is some cover, and it's not the worst I've ever seen, Quite often you find yourself frustrated running from flag to flag, getting taken out by snipers or bipods or tanks or planes. Overall, it's not an awful map. It's not a bad map at all, and I do like playing it. I do enjoy the bridge flags the most, but overall I would say it needs a little bit more work before it's one that I really consider a great Battlefield map. I would think that an easy fix for this would be including more transport vehicles, lots more little cars, and maybe add motorbikes in. This way you can get from flag to flag without too many issues at all, and if someone snipes you off a moving car or a moving bike, then fair dues to them, they kind of deserve that kill. But shooting someone who's running behind a couple of trees or across a river is not exactly skillful and is pretty frustrating as you die to it. Next up we have Panzerstorm, a map that I haven't played as much as the others because it's a fairly recent map. In my opinion, it is either a love it or hate it kind of deal with Panzerstorm. You have a huge map with wide open spaces, epic tank battles, and truly only in Battlefield moments. However, at the same time, you could argue that you have a map with no cover, camping tanks, and nothing really happening for large periods of time as you run miles between each objective. As I said, it might be a map you love or might be a map that you hate. It just depends on what you personally look for in a Battlefield game. It can be good at times. I've had a couple of engagements on flags that were pretty good. I've taken the scout class a couple of times and enjoyed sniping. However, it isn't what I expected it to be. I really thought it would be a classic wide open Battlefield map, but it just hasn't really reached those heights in my opinion. Next up, we're getting on to maps that I really like. First up, we have ARRAS. Overall, a solid map for my sort of playstyle and one that I've enjoyed since release. Decent for vehicles, decent for infantry, not too large, and apart from the bomber spam that DICE have fixed for the most part, although it still is there on some flags, but what I mean is at the start of a match where you will get bombed, that's been fixed. But it is a map that I just enjoy, and I will go on there and play, have a decent game of Conquest, and for the most part, have a lot of fun. It does work as well on Grand Ops pretty well. I think it's one of the best looking maps on the game. It's got some great flags, some good vehicle balance. Tweaks are needed, of course, but overall, it's a pretty decent experience. Next up we have Rotterdam, again a map that people seem to love or hate. I think Rotterdam is very good on Conquest on certain flags, but also pretty poor on others. Bravo is a flag that I enjoy capping, but once you're there you can't really get away from it. The bridge is awesome, and then at the same time it can be a real pain, because from the bridge you can shoot people running out in the open between B and D. You can get yourself really nice camping positions of players on A, and it can lead to some pretty static and pedestrian engagements. That being said, on Conquest I don't mind it. Grand Ops, it's 50-50 again. It really depends on what section of the map you're playing on, but overall I'd say it's a decent Battlefield map. The penultimate map in this list is FJELL 652, possibly my favourite infantry-based map on the game. FJELL 652 reminds me of Achibaba in Battlefield 1, however it's set in a snowy environment. Unfortunately, DICE thought it was a great idea to allow 5 planes per team, meaning that half the time you are on the receiving end of some low-skill bombing run, but that aside, FJELL is pretty good. I feel as if DICE would be better off limiting teams to taking 2 planes each. Maybe you could take a bomber and a fighter per team, or a medium plane and a fighter per team. It would be a lot better. You'd have a lot more balance, a lot more people on the ground having fun, instead of just random bombings in the air, which are no fun for anybody. Finally, we have my favourite map, Devastation. It's one of my all-time favourites on Battlefield, to be honest. It's great fun. It's great on Grand Ops. It's really fun on Conquest. I just love the overall feel of the map, and the main section where you've got Charlie Flag on Conquest is great. The organ provides only in Battlefield moments. It's good for pretty much all classes on the game, and overall it's just brilliant fun. You have some absolutely epic battles within the church section, and the only issue I have with the map, I think the vehicle balance is great, the only issue I have is the visibility. It's very difficult to spot enemies that are prone or crouched on this map, and that is a problem that spans all of Battlefield 5, but on Devastation it seems to be pretty bad. Maybe more so than the other maps, just because of the colour palette on that map. So as for what you guys voted for, Devastation was the clear winner. It had around 25% of the votes. Everyone loved Devastation. It was the runaway winner in this vote. Next up we had ARRAS, Panzerstorm and Rotterdam. They were maybe the best of the rest. And following from that, we had Twisted Steel, which tended to do quite well. FJELL didn't do well. Apparently that is a map that a lot of people don't enjoy. I really do like it, but a lot of people don't seem to. Maybe it's something to do with the planes. Maybe it's something to do with the fact it doesn't have tanks. I'm not really too sure. Bottom of the list was Hamada and NARVIK. Clearly maps that people don't enjoy. So I think that opinion of mine is shared with the community. However, there might be a few of you that do enjoy both those maps. Please let me know in the comments below. So thanks for watching this video. As I said, leave your comments down below with a list of your favourite map in the game, maybe your least favourite. You could do the whole 9 maps, ranking them from 1 to 9. It's up to you. I will read the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.